Hey there, deck builders! Welcome back to another episode of Super Budget Commander. As always, I'm your host Alex. Thank you so much for joining me. A Super Budget Commander deck has a maximum price of $50. Most cards featured in this deck can be purchased for less than $1 a piece. And just because it's budget doesn't mean it should durdle. Super Budget Commander decks have a clear, consistent strategy and are built to win. So without further ado, let's get started. Brion Stoutarm is a 4-to-cast, 4/4 giant warrior. Compared to other Boros commanders, Brion's abilities are entirely unique. The goal behind a Stoutarm deck is to create massive creatures, then fling them at your opponent's face for the win. This is a deck filled with massive creatures and explosive spells. If you're a fan of one-shot killing your opponents and hijacking their creatures, then this is the deck for you. It's well known that the Boros color scheme struggles when it comes to mana ramping. This particular deck has some large creatures that we're going to try to fling at our opponents. Creatures like Core Cartographer, Oreskos Explorer, and Knight of the White Orchid are going to help us in the early game to get more efficiency out of our late game. There are also several spells in this deck that have double white or double red in their mana costs. Creatures like Priest of Urabrask and Burnished Heart help us fix our mana so we can pay those costs. Stink Drinker Daredevil helps us reduce Brion's cost to only 2, 1 white and 1 red. Daredevil also helps reduce the cost of another very important giant, Hamletback Goliath, whom we'll talk a little more about later. We also have a variety of mana rocks and instant speed ritual spells that can help get us off the ground early. Everflowing Chalice is one of my favorite budget-friendly mana rocks. It can get you started off with a jump in the early game, and you can also feed a lot of mana into it in the late game. Pyretic Ritual and Seething Song are here to help us make explosive plays in the early game and pay for massive mana costs of bigger creatures. Instant speed ability means you can also use these spells to help set up chaotic plays during your opponent's turns. Of course, we can't forget about some of the more traditional artifact ramp as well. Soul Ring, Mind Stone, and Prismatic Lens speak for themselves. Efficient and cheap to cast, these are the perfect mana rocks to start off with in your opening hand. Another area of weakness for Boros is card draw. I've had to focus on some of the more traditional red loot effect spells like Faithless Looting, Tormenting Voice, and Cathartic Reunion. These spells aren't ideal, but they allow us to throw away cards we don't need and hopefully draw into cards that we can use. Like I said, card draw in Boros is a little weird. I'm pulling out all the stops though. We're going to utilize Commune with Lava, Mask of Memory, and Outpost Siege. Commune with Lava and Outpost Siege in particular are really interesting. Both give you temporary access to additional cards. They definitely put you in a use it or lose it situation. The thing I like most about Commune with Lava is it gives you access to the cards you exile until the end of your next turn. This gives it added versatility over a card, say like Outpost Siege, which only allows you to play the card you exile until the end of that current turn. I'm also utilizing Well of Lost Dreams to take advantage of Brion's lifelink ability. There is potential to gain a lot of life in this deck, so a card like Well of Lost Dreams is really valuable. So let's talk about the thing Brion does best, flinging massive creatures. Let's start off with some smaller creatures that can become big in a hurry. War Elemental is an interesting creature. In order to keep him on the field, an opponent first has to have taken damage that turn. Once he's on the field and you start dealing heavy damage to your opponents, he'll quickly become enormous. Functionally, Taurian Mauler and Sunscorched Regent are the same creature. In multiplayer games, both of these creatures quickly become massive threats. Hey, here's our giant buddy I mentioned earlier, Hamletback Goliath. This lumbering giant is particularly fond of token and creature aggressive strategies. I've also included Immolating Soul Eater and Molten Steel Dragon. The best part about these two creatures is that whatever life you pay to power them up, you can gain back due to Brion's lifelink. Let's not forget about Malignus and Serra Avatar. Both have the potential to enter the battlefield already massive. Yosei the Morningstar is a creature I like to call Jerk Dragon. There are several handy reanimation spells in this deck, and applying any of them to Yosei can potentially lock one of your opponents out of the game. Speaking of reanimation, Gift of Immortality, Angelic Renewal, and Sigil of the New Dawn are great for reanimating the creatures we fling. Gift of Immortality is particularly effective at resurrecting a particular creature over and over again. I'm also a big fan of Fatal Frenzy and Gratuitous Violence. Fling opportunities will be limited, so it's important to get off as much damage as possible. Here are some handy artifacts that help increase the effectiveness of Brion's fling ability. Illusionist Bracers and Thornbite Staff enable us to fling multiple creatures per turn. Mimic Vat provides us with token copies of creatures we've previously flung, so we can fling them again. My favorite though is Phyrexian Processor. When you cast this card, just pay an amount of life equal to any opponent's current life total. Then, when you fling the creature at them and kill them, all the life you spent on the processor, you gain back. Grafted Exoskeleton turns Brion's fling damage into infect counters. Hooray! For icing on the cake, why not attach a skull clamp to every creature you fling, and draw 2 cards every time you do it? What fun is it just to fling our own creatures? Why not steal our opponents and fling those at them too? Active Treason, Traitorous Blood, and Grab the Reins are really handy ways of snagging your opponent's creatures and using them against them. These spells also force your opponents to think twice about the creatures that they bring onto the battlefield. We brought a few creatures along to help us steal things too. Captivating Crew and Conquering Manticore are pretty basic. Use their abilities and snag a creature an opponent controls. The real star of the show though is Bizarre Trader. Using this crafty little goblin's abilities, we can permanently hang on to the creatures we steal with our other theft spells. To round things out, let's talk about the beautiful artifact known as Sunforger. There are 14 instant speed spells in this deck, and every single one is fetchable with Sunforger. Naturally, I've included a wide variety of spells to help ensure that Sunforger is always fetching something effective. Anything that could potentially interrupt our ability to fling massive creatures needs to be stopped. There are also 2 instant speed creature theft spells that Sunforger can help us get out too. No matter the situation, Sunforger is here to help keep us in the game. To help boost the odds of actually getting to play Sunforger, I've also included Open the Armory and Hoarding Dragon. Tutor spells help us improve our odds of pulling the equipment we need to help us win the game. I've posted a link to this deck list in the description. Go check it out and show it some love. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you like this video and you want more like it, be sure to leave me a like. If you're new around here, subscribe and welcome to the Deck Builders Society. If you want to make sure you never miss a video, be sure to hit that notification bell. You know the drill. Stay classy, Deck Builders. I'll see you next time.